The sky over Montana is not blue, not gray. It is a canvas of immense, unforgiving silence. It demands respect. And for decades, one man understood this covenant: Kevin Costner. His property, a sprawling testament to authenticity, was rooted deep in the soil, a stark contrast to the sterile, calculated estates beginning to appear on the horizon. This is a story about the fragile line between heritage and entitlement, a story about a man who built his life on solid ground, confronting a woman who believed the rules of Beverly Hills could be airlifted into big sky country. Her name doesn't matter. She represents the new wave, a class of individuals who buy land, but never understand it. They see nature as a backdrop, not a force. They demand quiet, yet they bring the loudest noise of all, the sound of unearned expectation. The conflict began, as always, with a triviality, a ranch event, a necessary process of land management, or perhaps just the joyful sound of authentic life being lived. But to the neighboring estate, constructed primarily of glass and disdain, it was an intolerable intrusion, a disturbance in the perfectly manicured plastic simulation they called home. The complaints started small, letters from high-priced attorneys, filled with legal jargon and threats that bounced off the resilience of the Montana air. Costner, a man who has played the lawman often enough to understand the difference between statute and justice, ignored them. He worked his land, he lived his life, but the antagonist, fueled by the certainty that money buys immediate compliance, escalated. She didn't want a conversation, she wanted victory. She wanted the immediate, crushing silence that only absolute authority can deliver. So she did the unthinkable. She called the sheriff. Not once, not twice. She filed repeated formal complaints alleging excessive sustained noise, a noise she claimed that constituted public nuisance and deliberate harassment. The tension, unseen but heavy as a winter fog, settled over the ranches. The sheriff arrived. Deputy Miller, a man whose boots were permanently stained with the same dirt Costner walked on. He drove slowly, not toward the noise, which had already subsided, but toward the source of the complaint, the pristine concrete fortress shimmering falsely in the sunlight. The neighbor emerged, sharp, impeccably dressed, the picture of entitled indignation. She held a phone, recording. Her eyes were hard, expecting instant vindication, demanding a citation, perhaps even an immediate shutdown order. She laid out her case with rapid fire, citing zoning laws she had clearly just Googled, demanding the law enforce her sense of peace. Deputy Miller listened. He nodded slowly. He took notes. His silence, unlike Costner's, was professional. It was the silence of a man weighing facts, a man calculating the true burden of the community. She pointed toward Costner's property, gesturing wildly at the barns, the horses, the entire landscape that dared to suggest life wasn't always quiet or convenient. Costner appeared then, not dramatically. He simply walked out of the shadow of a stable. He wore a worn hat, jeans, and a jacket that looked like it had seen every season Montana had to offer. He stood 20 yards away, his hands resting naturally at his sides. He didn't interrupt. He didn't raise his voice. He watched her performance. This was the critical moment, the pivot point where the story of a minor dispute becomes a legend of authentic truth confronting manufactured outrage. The antagonist, seeing Costner, puffed up further. This was her audience. She wanted the shame. She wanted the surrender. She turned to the deputy, her voice reaching a high, brittle pitch. She demanded Costner be disciplined. She accused him of deliberately flaunting his celebrity to defy neighborhood regulations. The deputy, finishing his notes, closed his pad with a slow, deliberate snap. The sound echoed in the sudden vast silence of the field. He looked not at Costner, but directly at the neighbor. "Ma'am," he began. His voice was low, gravelly, carrying the weight of the mountains. "We have received 4 calls from this address this week, all alleging the same nuisance." The neighbor smirked. Victory was imminent. "Exactly, deputy. It's chronic harassment. Are you going to issue a citation, or do I need to call the district attorney?" Deputy Miller paused. He let the arrogance hang in the air like smoke. He then delivered the cold, hard reality of the law that she had completely misread. "The calls," he continued, "have been investigated, twice by me, twice by Deputy Jenkins. Each time the noise has either been non-existent upon arrival, or has been determined to be routine, legal, agricultural activity." He took a step closer, forcing her to look up at him. What you are alleging, ma'am, does not meet the legal standard for a public nuisance. However, repeated false reporting to emergency services and using the law to deliberately intimidate a neighbor without cause, that is a different matter entirely. The blood drained from her face. Her entitlement, her shield, was dissolving. "Are you arresting me?" she stammered, the recording phone falling slightly in her grasp. "We are investigating you," the deputy corrected, pulling out a form, "for filing false police reports and harassment. You have used law enforcement as a weapon for personal spite. That is a crime in this county." The moment was electric. The plastic world had just hit the unforgiving granite of reality. The neighbor launched into a desperate panic defense, screaming about her rights, about her lawyers, about the injustice of being treated like a common criminal when she was merely seeking peace. It was then that Costner spoke. His voice was quiet. It didn't demand attention. It commanded it. He took a single step forward, not toward the deputy, not toward the neighbor, but into the center of the confrontation. He looked at the woman who had tried to weaponize the system against him. "You built your house on pavement," Costner said, his voice flat, heavy, and profound. "We built ours on dirt." He paused, allowing the brutal simplicity of that statement to land. "You call the police when you hear life. I call the vet when I see death." He didn't offer an explanation. He offered an indictment, a perfect summation of the difference between the superficial existence of the modern critic and the hard-won life of the authentic builder. The neighbor stared, speechless, her facade utterly shattered by the weight of that truth. Her manicured world, built on thin air and borrowed capital, was exposed by a man whose foundation was the very earth beneath his boots. Deputy Miller didn't even need to look at Costner. He understood the unspoken code. The moment was over. He formally placed the woman under temporary arrest for processing, leading her away from her pristine home, leaving Costner standing alone with the silence that was now truly earned. When the story leaked, not the official report, but the raw, unvarnished details of the confrontation, the entitlement, the arrest, and that singular devastating line about pavement and dirt, the internet exploded. The world recognized the archetype immediately, the fraudulence of the modern critic, sitting comfortably in their ivory tower, attempting to tear down the legacy of the person who actually built the tower, brick by painstaking brick. Costner's refusal to engage in petty legal warfare, his silent, powerful presence, and his final, authentic wisdom instantly transformed the dispute from a local incident into a global moral lesson. It became a symbol, the victory of roots over rhetoric, the triumph of experience over expense. The neighbor's social media accounts disappeared. Her reputation, meticulously constructed on appearances, crumbled under the weight of her own self-importance. She learned the harsh lesson that you can buy land in Montana, but you cannot buy the soul of Montana. The true noise, the only enduring noise, was her entitlement, and the silence that followed her arrest was the sound of justice returning to the vast, demanding land. His simple, devastating clarity cut through the noise of modern life. It was a reminder that authenticity is not passive. It is an active defense against the plastic world trying to consume it. The world needs more people like this. Share if you agree.